Tonight on The Computer History Museum presents Revolutionaries.
It's really incredible to have that sort of relationship with engineers and technical people where it's just like this intersection of art and technology.
The doodle that decorates Google's search page turns out to be a revolutionary idea. It started as a whimsical out-of-office message. Today, it's a destination for tens of millions of web users worldwide. Tonight, the history and challenges of the doodle and its deeper social meaning. Major funding for Revolutionaries is provided by the Intel Corporation.
Let me start just by simply getting you to introduce yourselves and talking a little bit about what your role is in creating Google Doodle. So Jen, why don't you start?
Okay, I'm Jennifer Huang. I'm from Long Island, New York. As you heard in the introduction, I don't have as an elaborate title as everyone else. I'm just a doodler. But I studied illustration and now I'm here.
Great. Chris?
So I'm Chris Huang from San Jose, California. I studied electrical engineering and computer science at UC Berkeley, and I lead the engineering behind the Doodles.
Marcin?
Hi, I'm Marcin Vichary. I'm originally from Szczecin in Poland. I can't really draw to save my life, but I have degrees in both computer science and human-computer interaction, and that's kind of how I'm helping with Doodles.
I'm Ryan Germick, and I am originally from Indiana, the middle of the country. And I lead the Google Doodle team, which is basically amounts to being really probably the craziest one on the team, trying to push people to do new and fun things, but really just letting an awesome team do what they do best, which is be really creative and push the web forward. Went to school in New York, studied illustration and creative writing, and after a stint in India and Japan, moved out to California and have been here ever since.
Ryan, I want to start with you. So after the Burning Man logo appears, this catches on, but how does that happen exactly?
Like fire? No. Well, I think it starts. So I think this is before my time. I was just graduating college around that time, and one thing that's really cool is that the Burning Man doodle actually happened before the company was even incorporated. So I think it's remarkable that this sort of irreverence and fun was really part of the company's DNA, and hats off to Larry and Sergey for doing that. And I think what happened was this was the first step in Google humanizing their homepage and having a personality as a company and showing that behind this portal to the internet for so many people were other real people who were making it happen and have interests and passions and things that excite them. And we've really just been trying to carry that tradition on ever since.
It was an occasional thing for a while. It wasn't a permanent thing. Do you happen to know, Jen, how it moved from that thing that used to happen only now and then to something that happens every day?
Yeah, so it started with Larry and Sergey, as you mentioned in the introduction, and we had, I think, a couple of freelance doodles once in a while for major holidays like 4th of July. And then it moved on to Dennis Huang, who was then an intern and an engineer by training. So they basically found out that this engineer/intern can draw, and they just gave him the task of celebrating regular holidays whenever he felt like it. It was usually around the holidays, like the winter season or Valentine's Day. But the company wanted to elaborate a little bit more on what they felt was their style, like how nerdy they were, how artistic they were. And that's when the Doodle team started to develop and started to grow. When I came on the team, it was only 3 people, and then I was the 4th. And since then, we've just been adding more artists with more opinions and more geeky childhoods, I guess. You might be the weirdest one. So with all of our different interests and with the expansion of Google, we just had more opportunities and more people to celebrate on our homepage.
And Marcin, you have to look after the user experience, and Google is very proud of that very clean homepage, very unadorned with anything, not very cluttered. And in fact, I think if we think back to the days of the early search engines, they were a mess when you landed on Lycos or Alta Vista. Google was just very different. So how do you balance that desire for that with what the doodle is intended to try to achieve?
It's actually really hard because it's always this tension that we have because, yeah, people come to Google homepage to search, right? And we can't really prevent them from searching. We don't want to. We try not to slow the page down in any way. We try not to make it too distracting. But on the other hand, we love the doodles, right? And people love them too, and we're proud of them, and we want people to get excited about some of the things we're excited about. So, sometimes we kind of like, draw people in. We have a little play icon, just to let them know you can do something with it. And sometimes we try to go, hide a little bit more. And with every interactive doodle that we have, and this is something that started just a few years ago, and we're still kind of figuring out what it means for us. We need to make sure that, people who don't care about it, although it breaks our hearts, they can still go on and do their search, but people who may be interested in, they will know what to do, and they will know how to enjoy it regardless of, how familiar they are with computers in general or the subject matter of the doodle.
So fun and surprising is really, those are two of the big elements of what a doodle is supposed to be, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's really like, surprise and delight are kind of like our mantra.
Yeah.
And we think it's, that's sort of our cause. We just want to give people a smile on their face for 10 seconds every once in a while.
So, and you just did that. You heard the laughter, right? Because we're looking at Pac-Man now as the Google logo.
Pac-Man's great because Pac-Man's actually, in a lot of ways, Pac-Man sort of is what sort of started sort of our current era of interactive doodles, and that's really just, it wasn't my idea to do Pac-Man. Actually, I think a team in Japan, we work with over 100 people around the world at Google who suggest ideas, and somebody noted that it was going to be Pac-Man's 30th anniversary. And when I heard that, it just got the gears going in my head. And Marcin over here, he's a nerd, in case you couldn't tell already. He's like checking his email like while we're speaking up here. I was like, hey, this would be so much cooler if it's a game. And I know this guy can do anything, so I'm like, I pinged him on chat, and I'm like, hey, we're doing a Pac-Man doodle. Like, can you make it a game? And he's like, give me a mock-up. And
actually how I sound when I do work.
On chat, yeah. And then that day he actually made a prototype, and that actually, and once we showed it to Marissa Mayer, who was our executive sponsor at the time, she gave us a green light, and then we've been spending sleepless nights making these things ever since.
So let's talk a little bit. I mean, the Pac-Man doodle is probably really a great place to just pause for a moment and talk about how it comes together. So you talked about how it got initiated. You went to Marcin and said, can this be done? So how do you pick up the story from there?
Very early on, as I was working on it and Ryan was helping me out, we realized we have to go all the way, right? We actually have to recreate Pac-Man, and we didn't want to do emulation because that's cheating, right? We want to use technologies that we love, which is JavaScript, HTML5, all of these things. And we did, and it kind of grew exponentially because it doesn't look like a complicated game. It really is. It took us a while, but eventually we made it happen, and some people actually thought we emulated it. Some people were tweeting that this is the Atari game or Namco, whatever, and we were like, yes, it's pretty great. Like, for some people, this was a throwback to whatever they were doing 30 years ago when they played Pac-Man for the first time. And this is like, those are the moments that we really aspire to I think, recreating. People who visit our homepage.
As someone who has to worry about a lot of the art behind the doodles, Jen, would something like that be one of the tougher ones? What's one of the more challenging doodles that you've had to take on, or the ideas that has come up and you've had to say, wow, that's going to be a real tough one?
Oh, goodness. I think the toughest one that I had to deal with actually had very little to do with my art education. Ryan loves this story because he knows that it made me really uncomfortable when I had to work on it. Earth Day of this past year, I didn't draw almost at all. I had to plant the doodle out of flowers, and that required a lot of heavy lifting, literally tons of dirt. That thing. It's actually maybe as large as from me to Ryan. And it was the hardest doodle I had to work on because I had to move the garden, not by myself, but it was like 1,000 pounds of dirt. Had to move it from one balcony to another, go up there and water it twice a day with like gallons and gallons of water. We didn't have a water hose, so I had to go into the micro kitchen and fill up a gallon. Everyone else was trying to get their coffee. I was that annoying garden girl. And then I forgot to get rid of it once it started to die and the doodle was over. So it caused a lot of grief on campus. But yeah, that gives me anxiety. When I'm not in control of the artwork, because that's my specialty, and I have to do something weird, that's when I get nervous.
That raises an interesting question, and it's one that I probably have been asked more getting ready for this panel than any other, Ryan, which is that I'll start with you, and then anybody else who's got a feeling about this, chime right in. Logos are sort of sanctified within most companies. They're the thing that you really don't mess with unless you've got a Madison Avenue agency spending tens of millions of dollars in a redesign, and yet as the blooming, prospering, eventually dying garden shows, this is just in your face. We're going to show you the Google Doodle in all its permutations and not really worry about that. How does that happen?
Well, I don't think Google's different in that way, because I think we take our logo very seriously as well. But I think any good logo represents a company, and I think for us, one of our main values is fun and irreverence, and even like that playfulness. And so, in my mind, there's no inconsistency there. Like, we actually enjoy playing with the logo and sort of having fun with it, and you'll see in the kind of things that we honor. Like this, we're actually now showing the doodle for. I don't know how many are familiar with the work of Gideon Sunback, but he's credited with the sort of modern day zipper, and this was an example where. It's a simple enough fun thing to do on our homepage, but this is something that we use almost every day. And sort of our values of innovation and technology and fun led us to, play with that. But that said, we take fun very seriously, and fun is a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I mean, Chris can attest to the zipper doodle in particular, like using modern web technologies and in deployments at a scale that's never been done before, is tough. And I think we probably. Yeah, we keep that as sacred and as serious as any brand does. We just do it the fun way.
So Chris, talk about that. I mean, we're seeing this web page get unzipped before our very eyes. You have to be the engineering mind behind this, the engineering lead. What challenges does that represent?
Well, there are many.
Yeah.
I think that one of the great things about the zipper was that it played with the physicality of the homepage. And it's something that everyone's familiar with, and you see that zipper up there, and you're like, oh, I have to unzip that, right? And you click on it, and it actually works, right? So I think that's kind of the surprising thing, like, oh, nobody would waste their time to make this actually unzip, but no, we went there. But there's a lot of technologies going on behind the scene there, where if you see in the video, the search result page is actually visible behind it, behind the jacket. So as you click, we're actually doing the query in the background, and when the page finally flips apart, you're actually on the result page, which we've never done before, and it's actually pretty scary if you think that, this for the first time we're actually covering up results. So I had to make a very clear and confident email to the SREs that keep the site running. It's like, never done this before. I'm going to make sure that we're not going to break search. Yeah. And that's the email that goes out for every interactive doodle.
How much help do you get internally from other Google engineers when you've got a problem like that to solve?
It's an amazing environment. If you have a problem, there's someone at Google who is an expert and probably worked on that in their previous job. One of the great examples is the Buckyball Doodle, where we had sort of like a rotating. Oh, this is another one that I got some help on. So this one was for the launch of Google Instant. And the problem I had here was that there's so many particles floating around. It was taking a lot of CPU to calculate this animation. And so I said, I need to represent the Google logo in as few colored disks as I can. I'm not sure exactly how to do that. I had some previous iterations that were okay, but not great. And so I decided, how am I going to I just need to get other Googlers to do my work for me, basically. So I packaged it up into a nice little interview question kind of homework problem that says, I'm going to give you an image in a bitmap. Return me the fewest possible number of colored disks that can represent that bitmap. And I put that like on just sent it out to a couple of Googlers, and I got back like 30 perfect responses to this problem. And so I actually had to choose, between, that one looks fantastic, this one looks fantastic. But I finally arrived at this as the winning solution. I think it's only 67 particles in the entire simulation.
So you're not doing your own work?
I mean, you know,
Why are you here?
when it makes sense, I will help.
Now, as far as the engineering culture within Google goes, if I have an engineer working for me on a really high priority project and I walk over and I say, how's that going? And he says or she says, well, I'm working on this doodle problem for Chris, and I'll get on that in a couple of hours. How does that play within Google?
It's interesting. So it was only recently this year when I started doing this as my full-time position. I was previously working on search, and this was kind of my side project. And so I always felt a little guilty. I always felt that maybe I'm taking away too much time for this project. But internally, there's just so much support, and everyone realizes that this is just our way of making something fun and sharing it with the world, and also showing off what you can do in a browser that couldn't be done even a couple of years ago. So definitely very much support in me taking time to work on these.
How confining is it, Marcin and Ryan, to work within today's web browser and still make all these magical things happen? And can you talk about it in sort of layman's terms so we could all understand, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 9 or an 11 or?
It's pretty confining. So I can actually give you an example. So a couple of years ago, we had this dual celebration. There was 4th of July Doodle that we wanted to do for, was 2009?
2010, no, 2010 for Rube Goldberg, who was born on the 4th of July in San Francisco, actually. And we wanted to celebrate him and 4th of July at the same time.
So this what we call sometimes a tandem doodle, and we have more examples like this. But so Ryan put together this, as he called it, overly patriotic Rube Goldberg contraption. That's delightful, kind of cute. We've never done this before, and it.
It actually explodes into stars, but that was a separate element.
There were fireworks.
But it seems incredibly simple, right? It seems like computers could do that. But they can't really. In 2010, it's very hard to do something like this in a way that would work in absolutely every browser possible, in every platform, right? We could do Flash, but it doesn't work on some things. We could use YouTube, but it's really heavy. It's going to slow down the page. We could load an animated GIF, but animated GIFs don't look that great, and we want our doodle to look great. So we actually invented this technique for the first time, I think, in at least our history, to animate it just for this doodle. Where we actually kind of cut up this animation, try and create it into little bits and pieces. And instead of just changing the frames, we just draw new little patches of animation on top of the previous one. So actually, let me show it to you the way it would look right here. Actually, I can explode it so you can see it a little bit better. So it's really what's happening is that we don't animate, we just patch every new little thing so it looks like it's a thing. And it allows us to do whatever we wanted to do and nobody knows any better. And sometimes that's the trickery that we have to use. And it's literally happening over and over again because we're really very excited about technology. The web is getting better literally every single week, right? And we want people to be excited about technology as well because that's what Google is all about, really. So we're trying to find all of these new technologies and find a good use for them in a doodle, right? And of course, Google homepage is not a place for tech demonstrations, right? We have very specific things that we want to do with our doodles, and it's celebrating people, celebrating events, things like that. But if there's this perfect moment where we can use a technology that just arrived, that nobody knows about, and we can actually use it for good, and it makes sense within the doodle, I think that's where we do some of the best interactive doodles we can, and I think that's very exciting.
We've talked a little bit about the engineering, and we saw that kind of amazing animation for the Rube Goldberg doodle. I'm going to talk about art now, and taking something from sketch to final product. And there are a couple of doodles, I think, that really caught everyone's eye on that. Popeye, are we going to talk about Popeye first? Were you involved in?
Sure.
Popeye and Sesame Street both. I want to talk about those.
Sure. So I love Popeye, and actually one thing I would like to point out is that we didn't celebrate Popeye. We celebrated E.C. Segar, who was the artist who created Popeye. But Popeye was his most famous character, but he was just also from the Midwest, from Chicago, So in this case, it's just kind of a sketch. So early on, I thought it'd be great. I think I share some of the founder's spirit of irreverence, and if you look at some of my doodles, I've burned the logo. I made Jennifer grow and then wilt the logo. And I thought it'd be really great if Popeye was punching the logo into a can of spinach. So this was like my first sketch, and then eventually I got a little more serious about making it look like Popeye, and realized that olive oil, although she's a love interest of many of us.
That's revealing.
She was actually, I had to make the hard choice that it was sort of cluttered in the composition, so olive oil went, and just sort of simplified that to like more of an ink drawing, and I considered doing it black and white, but then the colors seemed to pop pretty nice, and then tried to fake some sort of like print texture for that guy. So that was actually the final for Popeye, and it's just sort of a process of trying to emulate what it would look like when people experienced it. Really, Martine mentioned this with Pac-Man, but we really love the idea that we can create something that, you're seeing this for maybe a quarter of a second before you look for the weather or whatever you're searching for on Google. But we want that quarter of a second to be filled with a little positive feeling. So if you love Popeye or print newspaper comics or something, like hopefully that just gives you a little charge of positivity.
Let's talk about Charlie Chaplin in a video doodle, because there are video doodles from time to time, and there's one in particular, the Charlie Chaplin film, that I want you to talk about, and talk a little bit about how complicated it is to do a video version of a doodle as opposed to the animated but still somewhat static ones we've been looking at.
So I was in the video. The entire Doodle team at the time was also starring in the video. It was our crazy leader's idea because it was
We sound like I'm from North Korea, like.
Our honorable leader. He loves Charlie Chaplin, and I love Charlie Chaplin because we shared the same birthday. So I was like, cool, I'll be on the homepage on my birthday. So we actually had to get together not only the cast of actors, but we also had to work with Studio G, which is an internal video and animation studio in Google. So we had this whole cast and crew. We went to the actual places where Charlie Chaplin shot a lot of his films, which is where?
In Fremont, in Niles, actually,
Niles.
the home of the Silent Film Museum. I highly recommend, another great partner of Doodles, just over the way there. Charlie Chaplin shot 8 of his films, including The Tramp, where he created his famous Tramp character.
Yeah.
And where we shot the film was in some of the same settings where he shot his.
Yeah, but Ryan did a lot of work to research the location, talk to the museum's curator. There's a museum for Charlie Chaplin.
Silent film, but a lot of Chaplin stuff there.
So it was really hard work, especially for him, not so much for the cast.
And
we
Mike
have our
Dutton,
Charlie right here, Mike Dutton, who's sitting in the audience and helping to work on the projector. None of us are actors, so when we charged him to take the title role, he kind of freaked out for a second, and then he came back and he was literally just like Charlie. It was kind of scary.
He was actually, I remember he was in the museum, and he was like, I don't know if I could do this, guys. He was literally standing in front of a cardboard cutout of Charlie Chaplin in the exact same posture, accidentally, the exact same height.
Same height.
And we're like, you were born for this.
You guys want to see a little bit of it?
Let's take a look. Mark, that was terrific. And if the Google thing doesn't work out, I think, there's Charlie Chaplin may be in your future here. Let's talk about anything that may have gone wrong. Oh. Shall we?
Can I talk
Nothing
about
ever goes wrong.
Well, what we have besides surprise and delight, another one of our informal mottos is like, if you didn't break something, you probably weren't trying hard enough.
Yeah.
So I think something kind of goes wrong all the time. But we try to learn from that. And I guess one example actually would be on the technological side, we had an idea to do, actually this is Jared, I don't know if he's here, but one of our engineers, one of our 20% engineers, he brought a passion project to us. He was like, I really want to do a doodle for Alexander Calder, the Mobile artist. And he's like, I went to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago and I saw this amazing exhibition. And I know you guys celebrate artists, and it would just be perfect to have one of those mobiles like in the shape of an abstracted Google logo. Like that sounds awesome. Like let's try it. But at the time, we were a little bit more hesitant with the type of technology we wanted to use, and we sort of held back. We're like, well, let's make sure we use technology that everybody can use. And we actually tried to do it to accommodate like IE6 and some old browsers, and we tried to put it out, and just the technology just wasn't ready. And so we worked really hard, just like a normal doodle. We tried to get it right, and it just wasn't good enough for us. The animation was choppy. The files looked a little bit wonky. And we actually pulled it. We decided not to do it that year. But then Jared came back strong the next year. We looked at it again with modern technology. And if you want to pull it up, you can see what we ended up doing. So this is all actually not drawn. It's actually, he rendered all of this in the computer with vector graphics. You can see there's actually a little subtle shadow there. And one of the coolest things about this is even programmed it. The physics are real. You can push and pull the doodle. Like one step up, you do that in a museum, you get tasered. And on our homepage, it's fine. And but also, one other thing that was cool is in this doodle, it was affected by the computer's accelerometer. So if you had a laptop with an accelerometer, you could tip the laptop, and that would determine the physics of the thing. And so we're always trying to push what's available. And actually, Martin has another good story about something that's up right now. Actually, that kind of pushes what's available.
Yeah. So I don't know how many of you saw the hurdles doodle. This guy. It just happened. Yeah. So great work from a number of engineers and illustrators on the team. This is actually me playing, so you feel free to applaud anytime. But we were, so you can play with a keyboard and with a mouse and with a touch if you have a tablet, which kind of, hello, where was I? But we also had this new technology that just came out that you could actually plug in your game controller to your computer, right? And once you do it, you can play like old school games, right? You play using gamepad, and that's for some people it's actually a lot of fun. When this came out, this technology was exactly 6 days old. So we were petrified. Like Chris, alert level 9 or whatever, yeah. Right? So the thing is that we want to try, right? It seemed like a perfect fit because it's a game, and we want people to get excited about the fact that now can use gamepad to play web games, right? It's never happened before. But Chris and engineers on the team have this amazing infrastructure so that if in a case anything goes wrong, we can fix it, right? We can very quickly fix it or change it or pull it down or do whatever so that, again, people are not affected. People who actually come there to search, that doesn't crash their browser, doesn't slow it down. So I think, we're scared, but, we're also ready.
We talked about actually all the Olympic doodles that are going on right now. How far in advance do you have to start planning something like a different doodle for every day of the Olympics?
So this series was interesting because we've done the Olympics since the year 2000 actually. So what we wanted to do is kind of push our boundaries in a googly way. So we created a series of doodles here, and we actually started 6 months ago thinking about this. We'd heard the Olympics were coming, and we knew that we Googled it.
It happens once in a while.
And so we knew, and we knew it was coming, and so we, and we wanted to do something really fun, and we kind of pushed and pulled with Chris's terror level for how many games can we pull off, and so you can actually see 3 of them that are there now. Pro tip: kayak is actually is actually live on the other side of the world and will be live in a couple hours in the U.S. And we try to kind of emulate some like kind of old school video games with sort of a fun kind of silly cartoony look. And actually, although we planned it 6 months in advance, one other kind of fun thing is if you see the javelin doodle there. I don't know if you can see it large. Oh yeah. But we actually it came out on Sunday night. It would have launched Sunday night in the U.S. and we were all sort of impressed with the Mars rover landing. So halfway through the day on Monday, about 12, I actually replaced what used to be a blimp in the background with the Curiosity Mars rover as a little subtle nod to our friends down the street. But so even though we planned in advance, we try to stay ready to pull something down if we broke it or to celebrate something else if something comes along.
I want to talk a little bit about the leadership issue, which you've...
Issue?
You've...
How did you know?
It's an intervention.
Let me back up. I want to talk a little bit about the leadership of the group, and you've alluded to it a couple of times tonight with Marissa Meyer. Marissa was here in January. In fact, Ryan, you and Martine were here, and she talked in extended and glowing terms about how much it's meant to her to work with this team and the pride that she's always taken in the way that the Doodle team works together and obviously the product that you produce every day. What is it like now with Marissa not there and having moved on to Yahoo? Is that affecting you in any way?
I mean, we miss Marissa. She was a huge help for us and sort of our guiding light for many, many years. But I think she did a good job in, I was working with her for, a better part of a decade and definitely have internalized like her principles and we keep those really strong. And I think, she's another example of that intersection of art and technology. I mean, she's a technologist, but is a lover of art and fashion and, so we try to keep that spirit going. And I think, she was a great shepherd for Doodles for many years and, we'll just keep that tradition alive.
That's great. Matteo gets the first question, actually, and it was one I was going to ask, and I'm proud that it's his. What are your favorite doodles? So can you just go down the line and each of you talk about your favorite doodle?
He's fishing for us to say his doodle's our favorite doodle. It's up there. It's a good one.
Besides Matteo's. Go ahead, Jen.
My favorite doodle that I was responsible for was the birthday of Freddie Mercury. It was last September. It was a lot of fun because I got to work with the entire Doodle team. Oftentimes we have a doodle for ourselves, and this time I needed everyone to help me because I'm not really an animator. So I needed a lot of assistance. But it was great because I got to listen to the same 30 seconds of one of my favorite songs ever for about 3 solid months, which you'd think you'd get sick of, but I'd still love it.
And that would be?
Don't Stop Me Now.
Okay. Freddie Mercury, lead singer of
Queen.
Queen.
And I got to meet Jim Beach, who has been the manager of Queen for over a decade, for like 3 decades. So that was great. That was my favorite.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Chris.
I think my favorite has to be the particle doodle that I mentioned earlier, just because it's very calming as you're.
It doesn't look like it.
It's very zen though. It's kind of just like kicking through leaves, and I think it's a kind of a nice metaphor. People.
You need a vacation.
Yeah.
But if you still want to play with this, it lives on in the header of the Google blog, the official Google blog, so you can still play with it.
Nerve-wracking to work on, but calming to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how it's a contrast.
Martine.
So I have one I wanted to talk about that actually Ryan and I collaborated on, and that might be relevant because we're at a computer history museum. So I don't know how many of you can recognize those things. A computer called ZX Spectrum, almost exactly 30 years old, right? A huge computer where I come from, very popular, that did a lot to essentially get people into computing, right? And again, we had this situation that Ryan wanted to make a doodle for St. George's Day that also happened to be ZX Spectrum's 30th birthday, right? And we started talking about it, and Ryan knows I'm a nerd, but anybody who remembers these computers knows it's 1982. It has color graphics, but very limited memory, right? So if you take one of those images and blow it up, it looks kind of cool. But you have to realize there's very severe technological limitations, right? You only had 16 colors, but you can only assign 2 colors per each 8x8 pixel grid, right? You only get 256 pixels horizontally, 192 vertically. I never had this computer and I knew this by heart. So that tells you how much of a nerd I am, right? And I told Ryan, we have to do it right. Like we not only have to make something that looks like the ZX Spectrum, but we have to actually make it like as real as possible, right? So as Ryan was drawing, I actually made this little piece of software that Ryan could drop an image and we would check if it's valid, right? It could check if it could be rendered by this computer 30 years ago, right? So this is an example of like Ryan dropping one picture and it's telling him, oh, you got this one wrong because there's too many colors. You got this one wrong because it's like invalid combination of colors.
So it's a perfect piece of software because it basically automates Martin's function in general.
Yeah, right? So,
Debbie Downer.
and this was like, as I was flying to Europe, I think on the plane, I was doing this, and it took us together 29 iterations to get it right. Like across, so there's a couple of them. You can see how it started from very early sketch all the way to like trying to make it look like exactly ZX Spectrum long time ago, right? This is the end result, right? So this is exactly 256 pixels, et cetera, right? That's kind of cool, whatever, right? Who cares? But let me show you this, and you might wanna lower the volume because it's gonna be a pretty scary sound, but some of you might recognize it. Somebody actually took the doodle that we eventually put up, fired up the old computer from 30 years ago, and put it on a cassette tape and loaded it, right? So what you see here is loading 6 kilobytes of data, but it works, right? And it's pretty amazing because not only somebody actually resurrected this old machine from their childhood or whatever and put it all together. It's still loading, by the way, right? Imagine Google loading this slow. But not only you get a nice glimpse of how much technology progressed since 1982, right? What used to be like this huge 45-second load from cassette tape is now instantaneous on whatever machine. Oh, it loaded already, all right. But it's also something amazing because this doodle inspired somebody to do something, right? This doodle actually, we never expected this to happen, right? We were just like, we're gonna do our best, and somebody took it even one step further. And I think it was very humble and very happy when somebody does it. And for me, I'm a huge computer history nerd, so that works right there. But I think all of us have stories like this too, where somebody did something incredible with the doodle we worked on, and it's one of the best things.
Ryan, your favorite?
So I think continuing with that theme, one of my favorites was a recent one, and something that I've had a really good time with is creating doodles that allow other people to be creative. So the doodle that we did in May for Robert Moog, the synthesizer pioneer, was really exciting. And the cool thing about that, I don't know if Joey Hurst is in the audience, but he was like my main collaborator on this one. And we had previously worked on the Les Paul guitar last year, which was really fun. And we wanted to really take it to the next level. And for Robert Moog, mostly Joey really, we made a fully operational Moog synthesizer using the web audio API in Chrome. And we had a flash backup for other browsers. And so you can see here, there's, I think it was 24 keys, and 19 or 20 knobs. You had a 4-track recorder that you could record up a 4 30-second tracks simultaneously on, which you could play back, share a short link with your friends, or share it on Google+. And it was just a great opportunity to have that technology and art intersection, and really allow people to, we've been playing with the Google logo for years, and allow other people to play with it is something that brings me a lot of fulfillment, and just see millions and millions of people like playing around with this thing and just being delighted.
Is there a doodle archive? And if so, how do we get to it?
Google.com/doodles. Every doodle is there, and most of them were interactive. You can play.
Are there any topics or causes that are off limits for doodles? That is political, partisan, controversial. Who approves them and how?
I'll take this one too. So, I mean, we do, with our mission being to surprise and delight, we're not trying to surprise, delight, and enrage. Slightly, that last couple words really changed things. But so we try to keep things light and fun. So we're not really like trying to make a political statement or a point. There's plenty of wonderful things that everyone can agree are wonderful, or at least nerds can agree are wonderful, that we can celebrate.
This is a commercial question. What has kept the homepage in Doodles free from advertising? And a related question here is, what is your relationship with the internal Google marketing teams? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, so I mean, I think that again, early on, this is something that's just like literally not even day one. It's like day -17. The first doodle was like August 20-something, and the company was incorporated in September. You know, it was just the homepage was seen as a place to humanize the web and sort of acknowledge users and with a kind of shared passion. And it was like something about trust there. And I think that if we were to sell that space, make it a commercial space, that trust is lost. And there's so few places in this world, let alone on the internet, that aren't for sale. You know, and so I think it's a really, we recognize how special that is. And you know, in terms of like marketing at Google, we sometimes have like homepage promotions under the search buttons for a product or announcement we think is really important or really cool. And it could range from disaster relief in Japan when the tsunami happened, that was one. Or it could be there's a new version of Chrome or something, whatever's coming out. Google's constantly doing cool stuff. The search team just announced a couple new cool features today. In those cases, you know, almost like advertising at Google is seen as hopefully a helpful thing. You know, like if you have search ads and you see the ads on the left or the top of the screen, they're telling you about things that are related to what you searched about because we think you want to know about them. And we try to create like a win-win situation for both the advertiser and for the user. And so as far as the homepage and what's on there for marketing, it's a similar kind of thing. We think this is something the users are going to want to know about because it's something we're proud of that we did, and we think it, you know, hopefully all the products we make benefit their lives in some way. So, you know, as far as what goes on the homepage, that, you know, that principle is sustained.
Marcin, this is a question about users and the user experience. Is there an ideal time length of time that you would like a user to spend with a doodle, and have doodles ever been rejected because they take too long to watch?
Actually, that's really interesting. So we kind of all over the place on this. So as Ryan said, like with every doodle that's interactive, and probably every other doodle as well, we want to try something new, right? There's no point in like rehashing ourselves and doing the same thing over and over again, right? So for example, last November in Europe, we had this doodle that I was very lucky to have been working on because it was my favorite author, Stanisław Lem, who was a Polish author, and he worked most famously on a book called Solaris that was eventually turned into a movie. And we made this doodle with Sophia, who's the illustrator, that literally was like a 5-minute game, right? That was based on some of the stories of Stanisław Lem. And we were petrified, right? We're like, is this gonna be too long? Like, is this the place? It actually expanded, you know, just to resemble a book, you know, book illustration, because this is all based on the style of illustrations from his books. And it's all these games based on his stories. And I think people were happy, right? And we got a lot of really positive feedback. And a surprising amount of people actually, you know, stayed to the end, right? You have to solve the puzzles, and it takes 5 minutes, and it's a really cool ending. So if you want to go to the archive and check it out, it's actually pretty fun. But then on the other hand, we have hurdles, right? And you know, it's 10 seconds because that's how it works. You know, there's no point in making a marathon doodle, although maybe one day, I don't know, we can try. But I think we try to, with everything, we try to stick to the subject matter, right? And try to be true to whatever we want to celebrate. And if it makes sense for it to be short, we're going to make it short. If it makes sense for it to be long, we're going to try to make it long. Although, I think 5 minutes, I don't know if we want to go above that.
It's pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have some other ideas that, you know, I can't really talk about, but, you know, what if a doodle was around for like 24 hours and it kind of, you know, stayed with you, so if you visit it later, it changes, you know, as the day progresses. There's a lot of really interesting things that we want to try with time, and, you know, stick around and we'll see what happens.
So now I'm going to ask 2 final ones from up here. First of all, can you talk a little bit about Doodle for Google and what the aim of that program is and what you hope to achieve with it?
Sure. So Mateo is like our poster child. We love Mateo, and it's awesome. He's actually a Bay Area kid. But Doodle for Google is actually a contest we do all over the world, and many, many countries, United States. I just got back from the Doodle for Google a couple weeks ago in Poland, and also I went to the one in China, which was just really incredible. This is the Polish winner. It was really terrific. There's always symbols of Poland. It's really, and this is actually the one I won in China. Thank you, magic website. So what it is basically is an opportunity. This one in the U.S. this year, kid from Wisconsin named Dylan, And he, so basically we let kids read, we have a theme. This year it was if I was a time traveler, where I would go to ... A fairly open-ended theme, and we let kids age 8 to 18 draw a logo. And this year we had over 100,000 submissions, and it's a scholarship competition. The winners get a scholarship and a bunch of other goodies. We fly them out to New York for an award ceremony where all the doodlers come, and it's like really one of the highlights of the year for us, because the sort of creative spirit that comes naturally to a child or just a young person who doesn't have the inhibitions that adults like kind of grow to let weigh on them, is the type of creativity we try to have all the time as professionals. So it's just a joy to like hang out with like what's generally like it's basically the genuine article, and just people kind of playing with our logo in really like really delightful ways that we never thought of, and just have that sort of free creative spirit. And there's Mateo's again. I remember this one. This is a great example, actually. Like seeing, this was what was the theme that year? It was if I could go anywhere. What I'd like to do someday, right? So, and like Mateo, it's hilarious. Like it's just an alien slurping up the earth. And when we saw it, we were
Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah, we were just cracking up, And we were like, this is just so wonderful. And so we have all these come in, and then we actually put it on the public website. We get millions of views on the website. People vote for them, and the winner's chosen. And it's just really like, again, that spirit that we try to emulate professionally every day is something that just comes naturally. Like my nephews sing and dance and paint and wrestle and are just sort of free, and that's something that is really precious, and I'm very grateful to work at a company that values that and tries to put that as like on our mantelpiece, on our front page, to share that spirit with the world.
So one final question that I'd like for each of you to take a shot at, which is, where do you hope Google Doodle goes from here? You first, Jen.
Oh man. I hope that it goes to a place that's so interesting that it stresses me out. Because that means that it has to be something that I've never done and I'm not familiar with and I want to cry about, but that also means that it'll probably be something new and cool.
Chris?
I think for me, the greatest thing is when the concept of the doodle kind of evolves and takes on its own community aspects. So a lot of times you'll go onto YouTube the day of, or the day after, and see, oh, here's someone who destroyed my score in hurdles, or someone who like.
You built it.
They did a puppet show. I'm not that good at hurdles, actually. It's kind of they did a puppet show with the Henson Doodle. I think that kind of letting users have the opportunity to create their own content using the doodles is very interesting. So I'd like to see us, without repeating ourselves, keep pursuing that sort of model.
Marcin.
So one of the obvious things I was thinking about is, what's the new technology we could use to get doodles, in a better place, or try something new. And any of you who pays attention to HTML5, there's all sorts of amazing things that are happening, literally every day, right? All sorts of new technologies that we're already looking at, and we're thinking, could we use it in some doodles in the future? What would be a good combination? But that's kind of the easy answer, right? And it's not really about technology in the end, right? And I think the only thing that I hope for is whatever I work on next, people really just enjoy it, and it brings them joy, or maybe some memories from whenever whatever we're celebrating, or inspires them to do something, things like that, right? I think those are the things that matter the most. And if sometimes some of like my work, or the hardest part of my work is saying no when we have a technology that we're really excited about, and we're thinking, does it really make sense to use it, right? What if it's just an illustration? Not just, it's still a lot of work for Jen and other illustrators, but do we have to use technology, right? Can we just do without it? And sometimes the answer is yes. And so I'm hoping that, sometimes, I just don't do any work and we still get a really great doodle, and then I win.
So I kind of think of that question in sort of two levels. One level is sort of like secrets that I don't want to tell, because I don't want to ruin any surprises. Right. But another level is more general, in that, like, kind of speaking a little bit back to what I was talking about for Doodle for Google, and sort of the sort of spirit of creativity that children sort of have naturally. Like, I just want to get better. I want our team to get better at sort of where ideas come from is like a magical thing to me. I don't know where they come from. I don't know like how it happens. I just know that they come and it's like a gift, that you can then, hopefully, it's a little seed that you can grow and share with the world. And I just want to get better at like fostering those things. And I want to create a team that, everybody feels like they are in tune with these gifts that they're getting all the time, these ideas they're getting, and they're using their considerable skills to raise those up and share it with their audience. And there's just a lot of like somewhat boring, but kind of in some sense like infrastructure kind of stuff. It's like basically my adult self wants to learn how to make my child self like work freely and like without friction, and to share as many of these ideas as the team has, because there's many, many, many more ideas that we have than we could possibly pull off, and even the ideas that we pull off, there's always something, the next step that I would have loved to have taken at that time, and we've grown so much as a team already just in the last few years, both in sheer numbers of people, but also just the kind of scope and quality of what we're trying to pull off, and I love the trajectory we're on, and I want to just keep building a machine that can kind of keep that going.
Thank you for taking us behind the scenes tonight. Your passion, your talent, your engineering skill, and your commitment to this whole thing, I think it's really inspirational, and it shows that either if you're technical or non-technical, you can still make a huge contribution to a project like this, and it's just been wonderful to have you with us. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for coming, and have a good night.
The Google Doodle first appeared in 1998 as an out-of-office message left by founders Sergey, Brin, and Larry Page. Today, it's an icon that both illustrates and makes history. These are the stories we tell at the Computer History Museum. Join us next time for another episode of Revolutionaries.